Welcome to Coffee and SEO, where we sit down for a coffee hour together and simplify SEO, making it super approachable for your business. I'm Taylor, your host and the founder of Aligned SEO. And at Aligned SEO, we specialize in helping photographers, creatives, and service providers get visible online and reach their dream clients through holistic SEO strategies. Whether you're looking to increase your Google rankings, attract more dream clients, or just make sense of SEO, I will be your SEO guide and bestie. So let's simplify SEO, align it with your goals, and get your website working just as hard as you do so you can get back to doing what you love. Today I have special guest Lauren Glynn, who's coming in and chatting all things organization and productivity, which so many of us need. Using her experience from working with Fortune 500 companies and the federal government, Lauren helps online business owners get organized and productive by creating processes that help them manage their time, even with having everything on their plate. With Lauren's guidance, they can focus on what truly creates value, ease the overwhelm, and build a business that supports the life they want. Her clients gain the clarity and control they need to confidently grow their businesses without feeling stretched too thin. Well, Lauren, I'm so excited to have you on the Coffee and SEO podcast. I would love to just start with hearing a little bit more about your role and also how you even got into this role of helping business owners like me with productivity and time management and focusing on priorities.
Yeah, so I, believe it or not, started my life as a theater major. We were actually just talking about this before we started recording. But my major was in lighting design for theater. And then I graduated and realized that I didn't like sucking up to people enough to be in theater. And so became an office manager at a children's theater, moved into an office manager role with an Apple store randomly, and then sort of worked my way up from there into corporate, being a business analyst. Then I went into what's called the Scrum Master role, which is where you're kind of a team coach. You're helping the team organize their work, prioritize their work, organize their time, and then moved into an agile coach role, which is sort of that next level above that, where you're helping multiple teams, you're helping organizations figure out how they want to organize their time, what their priorities are, what their processes are, what their systems are, and all of that stuff. So I did that for places like the federal government, which, if you can imagine, trying to change the processes of the federal government is
I can only
quite
imagine.
the challenge. And then also places like Whole Foods, right after they had gotten bought out by Amazon, which was another interesting challenge. And then Pfizer as well was another one of my clients. I helped them with their COVID vaccine marketing campaigns. Wow. So I've done sort of a wide spread of different places, helped them implement these sorts of ideas, and then realized, why am I helping these big corporations when small businesses actually need this help more? Because small businesses, first off, they probably don't have these skills necessarily, even if they were in corporate before. Usually that's not something that corporations focus on. And then also, they are much more excited to work with me than someplace like Pfizer, who is told by a higher up that you need this person on your team and they're going to help you whether you like it or not. Right. So it's much more rewarding for me to work with small business owners and come in and help them see where their time is going, where it should be going, what's your big vision for your business. All right, how do we step back from that and actually create the goals? Okay, from there, how do we actually spend your time in the most effective manner? So that's sort of the very Reader's Digest version of how I got to where I am today.
I love that. And yeah, your journey was all over the place. So you have experience with small businesses, big corporations, and it sounds like you're bringing that knowledge and experience from working with those big corporations with all the systems and everything into the small business world, which is, like I was saying, exactly what we need. And I'm really excited for this conversation because, I mean, I'm working off of my notes app here and I've got my to-do list and everything there and it's a little chaotic. So I think, a lot of, especially creative entrepreneurs, we definitely need those systems to stay afloat, but it's not something that we're, always that good at. So this is going to be so useful. And I love that you've got experience in both. That's super cool.
Yeah.
So, from your expert opinion, why do you think so many of us business owners often kind of fall into that trap of survival mode?
Yeah, so we'll define survival mode just in case people are like, I don't know what that means. So survival mode is when you're literally just doing the things in front of you and you don't have that time and that capacity to think of the bigger picture. Survival mode is, I just have to get this one more thing done. I just have to get through this week. I just have to get through this month, and then everything will be better next month. And spoiler alert, it's not usually better the next month. And business owners often get stuck in this trap because they think they have to just keep going. And they think that to take the time to plan and organize is a waste of time. They think that, oh, well, I have to get this thing done first, or I'll get to that later, or I'll get to it, later when things are less busy. And they don't really prioritize taking the time to sit down and plan out where it is they should be spending their time. And so if they're not taking that time in the beginning, then it's really easy to get stuck in that cycle of just reacting to what's in front of you and not being able to think more strategically, not being able to think more big picture so that they can spend their time more thoughtfully and more intentionally.
That totally, checks out. And I feel like it's so multi-layered. There's the foundational layer of like you need these systems to like operate your business without being in survival mode all the time, but you also can't grow your business if you're always in that survival mode where you're just trying to stay afloat. So I could see how it's just so important for business owners to have some sort of system in place so they're not just trying to like stay above water.
Yeah. And it's hard because, I actually am doing a podcast episode about this soon, about balancing that creativity and productivity. How do you let your creativity naturally flow versus actually being productive and planning things and having structure? And it's a hard balance. You became probably a business owner because you enjoy the creative side. You enjoy, creating things and working with people, but you most likely, from the creative people I know, don't enjoy creating the systems, and you don't enjoy the nitty-gritty of sitting down and figuring it out and planning how things are going to work and, implementing tools and things like that, whereas I am a giant nerd and that's what I enjoy, but I am not a creative either. So it's hard because when you become a business owner, you kind of have to wear all the hats and you have to do everything. Right. And the reason that you started your business was your passion, but your passion isn't the only thing you have to do as a business owner. So it's a really common trap. And I think that a lot of business owners actually end up giving up because they just hate so much of the admin and the behind the scenes stuff. And, that's not what they want to be spending their time doing. Yeah. And so you have to really figure out, is it worth it to me to be self-employed, to be able to do what I want, if it also requires me to do all of these other things that maybe I don't enjoy, but they're required for me to reach my goals and to have this business and to run it the way that I want to run it. So those are questions that you have to ask yourself when you're starting a business. It's not just about, can I, do graphic design? It's, can I do graphic design? And then can I also do bookkeeping? And can I also do client onboarding? And can I also manage all of the stats? And can I also do marketing? Like, it's a lot of things that I think a lot of people don't realize when they get into running their business for the first time.
For sure. I think that's so true. And I mostly, work with creatives and photographers, and I can attest to that myself because I am a photographer. That, we didn't get into this because we were thinking about all the business stuff that we're going to have to do. We got into it because we wanted to create art. So, it doesn't come natural to a lot of artists. And the funny thing is, I think because of that myth of I just have to keep going and make it through and I can't stop to figure out what to prioritize, I think we do fall into that trap, and then we start drowning and becoming really overwhelmed, and then we go into that survival mode. So it's just a hard balance, but I think a lot of people avoid going into the business systems and trying to organize everything, but that's exactly what we have to do to stay organized and be less overwhelmed.
Yeah, and I think that the key too is to do enough without overdoing it. And that's a hard balance, just like everything we've been talking about. When you're first getting started, you probably don't need an in-depth CRM. You probably don't need really sophisticated systems and tools. You could get by with a simple one-page website probably. But as your business grows, you have to be investing in the back end of things. You have to also be investing in your own personal processes and your own personal ways of doing things. And you can't just let those things stagnate just because it's not something you want to think about if you want your business to grow. But it's a balancing act of how much time do I invest in this versus how much time do I invest in growing the business. And if you don't invest any time in it, then it's going to catch up with you when your business does start growing and you can't keep up with it, and you're losing leads because you can't keep track of them and follow up with them, and you're suddenly finding your business going in a direction that you maybe didn't want it to go because that's what happens to be in front of you. So it's a really hard balancing act, especially in the beginning, of figuring out how much time do I spend on the systems and the back end of the business versus actually building the business and making it what I want it to be.
So true. So true. So, you work with a lot of business owners on this very thing. So what's your process like to helping someone determine how much time to spend on those foundational aspects of creating the systems versus the growing the business part?
Yeah, so the first thing that I do with my clients is we take a step back and we think about your big business vision. In the next 3 to 5 years, because you don't need to think through your whole life because things are going to change. But in the next 3 to 5-ish years, where do you want your business to be? How do you want it to run? How do you want it to integrate with your life? Do you want to just be working 20 hours a week, making enough to get by, to be happy, but not like tons of money? And it's just sort of something that you're doing to support yourself, but not really anything else. That's great. Now we know that, so we can work towards it. Or do you want to really build like an agency? Do you want to have people and a team working with you? Do you want to be working with bigger corporations? Do you want to be, working a lot so that you can build a bigger business and moving towards something bigger in 3 to 5 years? Or do you want to be something that's more like a course creator, or do you want to do something more like a membership? What do you want your big business vision to look like? And this can change, right? We're not carving anything in stone, but you should have some idea of where you want to go in your business, because otherwise you're just throwing things at the wall and reacting to the things in front of you, which is all we just talked about. And you're not having any sort of intention behind the actions that you're taking. So by setting that big business vision, that informs everything else that we do. And then we take a look at that big business vision and we say, okay, what's the next step we have to take to get there? Not what are all the steps between now and then, or what's every little tiny thing that we have to do to get there, but what's the big next step that in the next 2 to 3 months that I have to accomplish to actually get to that goal? And that's the vision, that's the goal that we then focus on for the next 90 days. Okay, so if we're moving towards this goal, and usually there's 2 to 3 to 4 of them, depending on your capacity and how big the goals are. But if those are the 3 things that we're working towards, what are the steps we have to be taking every day to accomplish those goals? And that's how you filter out everything else. If you can't sit down and say, I'm working on this thing because it's it's helping me get towards this goal, and then because I want this to be my bigger vision, then you shouldn't be doing that thing. It shouldn't be happening, shouldn't be on your calendar. And I know it sounds super simplistic, and this is hard for people to implement. I'm working with a client who's a nutritionist who started her business working one-on-one with people because that's what she enjoyed doing. She wants to help them. She wants to help them eat healthier and manage their food and things like that. But she's now gotten so big that she actually has 10 other nutritionists working with her, which is great. Like, it's a great problem to have. But she wants to build a membership. But building a membership takes time, and it takes energy, and it takes effort. And so she came to me because she's like, I'm still working with people one-on-one. I'm still doing all these conferences and presentations, but I really want to build this membership so I can have a bigger impact, so I can help more people. And she's had to make some really hard choices around turning down people who wanted to work directly with her, but she just doesn't have the capacity. She just doesn't have the time to give them and also build her business. So by developing that bigger vision of, I want to help more people, I want to expand my message, I want to build a membership, that helps her then answer those questions, those queries when people come in and say, I want to work with you. And she just has to go back and say, I just don't have the capacity. Here's my other, nutritionist that you can work with. And that's really hard for her, right? Because she got into business to help people, not to turn them away and not to say no, and especially not to turn down money that people are trying to give her.
Right.
But she has to keep that bigger vision in mind in order to know that it's the right decision and to kind of stick to her guns and her boundaries around what she wants out of her vision and out of her business.
Yeah, that is such a hard thing to do. What you said there, just even saying no in certain areas, especially when it comes to making some sort of sale or turning down somebody that you really want to help because you have a bigger goal in mind. That is so, so hard to do.
Yes.
It probably helps a lot to have you in her corner, helping her streamline things and encouraging her to say no because, you've got this bigger goal in mind. I think, keeping those goals in mind is so important because I think we can lose sight of that a lot if we're not thinking about it every day or if we're not really clear on what those goals even are. It's so easy to get lost in the forest or in the weeds.
Yeah, and I think, having someone that can help you define what that is really makes a big difference because it's, like you said, it's so easy to get stuck in the weeds, but it's also really easy to kind of flounder and say, I don't know what the next step is. I know what the vision is, but I don't know how to get there. And so by having someone that's sort of a neutral third party come in and say, well, what would you tell someone to do or, help you kind of talk it out, I think makes a big difference. And also having that accountability of someone that I check in with my clients on Slack, as frequently as they want. And having that accountability of having to go back to someone and be like, yes, I stuck to my goals. I knew what I wanted and I passed off that client that wanted to work with me to someone else. It was painful, but I did it. And then having someone, like you said, in your corner that's like, all right, great. What did that free up your time for you to do in order to work on the membership? So having someone in your corner can make a huge difference, and also that clarity around what you want and where you're headed.
Yes, totally. That makes so much sense. And I think what you said there too about recognizing, it's almost like I think our brains sometimes get stuck on everything we're losing when we're setting boundaries. But when you stop and think about it, really we're gaining time and energy back, and we can prioritize on the things that really align with our business goals. So it's easy to get stuck focused on all the the money that we're losing or the client that we're losing or the opportunities, and forget that we're gaining so much by setting that boundary. So that kind of brings me to my next question, like what are some practical ways to even recognize what boundaries to set and then setting them and enforcing them? Because I know it's really hard for a lot of us to do that.
Yeah, I think setting boundaries is such a I don't want to say hot button topic, but it's a very popular topic right now because
that's true.
We have historically been so bad at setting boundaries generally as a population, especially as women. I feel like we really struggle to set boundaries because most of us are raised not to have them. And so now as business owners, we kind of have to relearn that skill of what do I really want, what's really important to me, and what do I want to kind of keep away. And so I think the first thing to do, and also remember that your boundaries can change. If you realize that, hey, this isn't enough, or this isn't really getting me where I want to go, then your boundaries can change. But you have to make that conscious decision to change them. Don't just let someone trample all over them. But one way of recognizing that you want boundaries is to think about, like I said, that bigger vision. What do you want your life to look like? If you only want to be taking client calls 1 day a week, if you maybe want a business where you don't have to take client calls at all, like maybe that's how you want your business to run. So figuring out what you want that vision to, and I know I keep coming back to vision, I feel like I'm a broken record, but figuring out what you want your life, what you want your life to look like will help you understand where your boundaries need to be. So some boundaries that I have personally is I only take calls on Tuesdays and Thursdays because those are the only days that I do my makeup. Those are the only days that I have set times that I'm at my computer. So those are the only days that I do client calls. Those are the only days I do podcast interviews. Those are the only days that I am, committed to sitting at my computer. And then all the other days are flexible. If I'm feeling like working, I will. I often work weekends because I find that it's really quiet and I can get a lot of things done. But I often take days off during the week because I don't have a, family or kids or anything. So it's really easy for me to like go to the grocery store at noon on a Wednesday and not have to fight the crowds.
So smart.
Right. So, those are my boundaries, and those are examples of different boundaries that you can set. And then also figuring out, like, my client, what do I want my business to look like? If she only wants to have a membership and just a couple of clients, then she has to set boundaries around that. So she only sees clients on Tuesdays and Thursdays. She has specific days that she has meetings with her team, and she creates those boundaries for herself and then sometimes lets them run over, and that's something that we're working on together. But at least she has them, and at least she starts setting them, and now it's just like a muscle. You have to get used to flexing that muscle, you have to get used to using it, and you have to get used to saying no. So figuring out what you want your life to look like, where you want people to respect your time, respect your energy, and things like payments. Late payments is another great boundary that you can think about setting. Have something in your contracts that says if your payment is more than 5 days late, then it incurs a surcharge, and automatically add that surcharge. Set it up in your system so it automatically adds that surcharge and automatically sends those reminders to people to pay, and it has it has that information everywhere in your system so that your system is the one kind of enforcing it and helping you enforce it, and it's not necessarily just falling on you to do it. And then I was listening to a podcast, and I can't remember which one it was, but one of the things that she recommended was, Chill and Prosper. That's what it was. And one of the things that she recommended was create personas in your business. If you're a solopreneur, but you want to be able to sort of blame someone, she always had I can't remember the name that she used, but a guy in accounting. So the guy in accounting would be the one, and it was like an email alias. They were the one that were following up with the payments and like chasing them down.
Gosh.
And she could be like, oh, sorry, that's, Brad over in accounting. He's kind of a jerk, but sorry, those are the rules. And so like, if you want to do something like that, that's totally a good way to set a boundary where you're kind of blaming someone else, kind of playing it off a little bit. And it also makes you feel like a bigger business so that people don't realize that you're maybe just a solopreneur. So those are some different ways and some different areas that you could set boundaries to kind of help you figure out what you want. And like I said, they can change, but it has to be a conscious decision to change. It can't be, oh, well, I set a boundary for Tuesdays, but this client only can meet on Wednesdays. So I'm going to open up my Wednesdays for everybody. Like, that's not a great choice, depending on your reasons for doing it. But if you're saying, oh, I really want to work with this client, but they can only work on Wednesdays, all right, I will allow them to book on Wednesdays, but no one else. Or you can change your day. Now it's going to be Tuesday, Wednesday instead of Tuesday, Thursday for everybody. Whatever the case may be, it just has to be a conscious decision to do it.
I like that. Yeah, it all kind of comes down to choice versus letting somebody else compromise your boundaries. That totally makes sense. And I love what you said there about, well, obviously having have all these different personas of your team members, even though it's just us sometimes. But I love that because I feel like sometimes we do need somebody to blame, and it's easier to blame. Well, it's easier to blame ourselves, but also I think having those personas, like, that's so practical. But what you said there too about blaming or having these systems in place so you can kind of blame the system, I feel like that helps so much when enforcing boundaries, especially in the beginning, because it can be so hard when people don't respect our boundaries, or when they kind of push back on our boundaries, or we're left feeling guilty or just bad. So having a system in place or policies or a certain way that we always do things is just so helpful.
Yeah. And another way that I do it too, so I said I only do meetings on Tuesdays and Thursdays, speaking of systems, is my calendar in my system is only open on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So people don't even have the option to step over that boundary. So there's lots of different ways that you can implement systems to help, enforce these boundaries that you've created for yourself.
Yeah, definitely. And I love just giving, the appearance even that you only work on certain days, or setting things up so that it's very clear what your boundaries even are.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, I think it was the same episode for that podcast. She said that people responded better when the accountant's name was a male name than if it was a woman.
Interesting.
Yeah, so people respected the boundary better when it came from Brad in accounting than if it came from like Angela in accounting. So take that for what it's worth.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Wow, well, I'm definitely going to be thinking of all my team members over here. So everybody close your ears. But that's honestly brilliant. I really love that, because truly we have all these different roles in our business. It's just, us doing it, or a version of ourselves. So I really love that idea. I feel like a lot of us can utilize that. Do you have your own kind of persona, team member situation all built out?
I don't know. I'm intimidating enough that people don't really push my boundaries, so I don't have personas set up in my business yet. If it becomes a problem, it might be something I investigate in, but I guess I'm very intimidating because people don't really push my boundaries.
So we just all need to get to that point where we are intimidating enough to not be pushed around.
I guess. I don't know.
I like it. I think it's a confidence thing too. I think a lot of, especially creative entrepreneurs, have such a hard time saying no or disappointing people. I mean, it all starts with our art and our creativity, and we want to please people. So I think especially when it comes to the business side, it's just really hard to feel like we're disappointing people. So I think it is, like you said, a muscle that just needs to be built and practiced all the time, and then eventually it feels more natural.
Yeah, and that's it for sure. Like I learned to enforce my boundaries very early on in my corporate career, especially as a coach, especially as a woman in technical fields, because I started with software development teams and I was usually the only woman there, and my job was to help the team work better together. And it was a very intimidating environment to be surrounded by all these dudes. And so I learned really early on how to stick to my guns, how to enforce my boundaries, and how to fake the confidence to at least get them to listen and to go along with me. So
I think that's a really good practical tip too, of like kind of faking it till you make it, faking that confidence, because especially when you know it's something that is so necessary and so good for you. I think faking that confidence until it feels true is really a great tip.
Yeah. And honestly, if you look around, most people around you are probably faking the confidence that they have.
That's so
true. Don't feel bad about faking it. Just recognize that everyone else is probably already doing it too.
That is so true. And I think sometimes when you exude confidence, especially when you're saying no or setting a boundary or reciting a policy, I think it maybe is received a little bit better too, versus, if there's a little give room, it's easy for people to push a little bit more. Well, that was so useful, and I love all those tips, especially, building that team of people out and exuding confidence, setting those boundaries. And I think just kind of circling back to like really becoming in tune with what our vision is for our business, I think that's that's key to all of this, all of figuring out what to focus on and how to time manage and build systems and just all the things. So I really appreciate you sharing all those tips. I'm curious for, business owners and listeners of this podcast, if they want to get in touch with you or learn more about your VIP day. Would you share a little bit more about what that looks like?
Yeah, sure. So I offer a VIP day, as you said. It's called your CEO era VIP day, where we sit down together, we figure out where your time is going now, and then we figure out for the next 90 days, where do you want your time to go? What does that bigger vision look like? What does the next step look like, so that we can set those goals, and then we actually set a plan for you to achieve those goals. So I don't just leave you with a list of goals and good luck figuring it out on your own. We actually sit down and create a detailed plan, or as detailed as you want. Not everyone wants the nitty-gritty, but a detailed prioritized plan for you to actually achieve the goals that you want to reach in the next 90 days, so that you can step into your CEO era and actually run your business and not just be stuck in the weeds and, putting out fires and all of those cliches that we always hear about running a business, but actually have the time to think strategically and have the time to plan your business vision and where you want it to go. So you can get more information and book your VIP day at laurenglynn.com/VIP. And if you use the code Taylor, you will get $250 off your VIP day. And that is for anyone listening. And you can go in ahead and book that whenever you're ready.
Awesome. Thank you. And I will also link that in the description below this episode. I love that you do it in a day as well. I feel like for a lot of us, it could take an entire year to probably get through something that we could do with a coach or a mentor in a day, someone who's going to help kind of streamline everything. Because like we talked about, it's easy to get into the weeds and, get distracted. So I love that you do it all just in a day. That's all it takes is just a day to clarify everything. That's awesome.
Yeah. And if, a day feels really intimidating, I do offer a 2-day version. It's the same exact program, but sometimes people just can't focus and concentrate for one day. So I offer the option to do 2 consecutive days if one day is a little bit too intimidating.
Awesome. And I bet it just looks so different for everybody. Well, Lauren, thank you so much for joining me. I learned a lot, and I'm sure all of my listeners will too. If you want to connect with Lauren, I will also list all of her social media handles below, so give her a follow. She also has a podcast herself. I think can you remind me the name?
Yes, it's Process to Profit, and it's a video podcast, so it's available mostly on YouTube, but also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all those normal places you would find podcasts. So Process to Profit.
Awesome, and I will link that below as well.
And thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Lauren. So thank you all for listening, and I will see you in the next episode.